Well, hello, and welcome to part three, maybe, of the Sword of the Covenant. I am joined by Mr. Erik. Erik is going to be joining me tonight to answer a question that was posed to us in a comment. So, if you guys have questions maybe that you want answered someday, drop it in a comment below and we may be able to track it down. There's generally not that many comments, guys, and we generally do our best to look at them. So, sometimes we're not answering your comment because we realize the question you posed is so deep and vast. It's like we're staring at the Grand Canyon, y'all, and we're like, I'm not going to be able to answer that in a quick jiffy. But tonight, here's what our stab at it is. Pun intended. We're going to stab at this question here. You ready? Whether or not, okay, part one of our video series and part two, we're wrestling with the question of the ways of death, the arts of death versus the ways of life. Should people basically be studying the martial arts, or should we more so be studying the way of life? That was part one and two of the series. If you haven't watched those already, they're going to be really helpful for you. So I encourage you to go back and watch those first. If not, don't worry, you can jump right in tonight. But we're going to be answering a question that was asked to us, which was this: what and how does swearing an oath to, say, join something like a military have to do with following the ways of Yah? Or should people who want to follow the way have anything to do with swearing oaths of allegiance towards something other than following the commandments and the instructions of our Father in heaven? Part two of it will kind of be dealing with saluting as well. Where do these things have their origins? What are the roots of these? And where do we, as followers of the way, have a way of interacting with them, or should we? So, in order to answer that question, I have brought on with me one of the mightiest of Gibborim in the history of my life, Erik.
Wow.
Erik, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Awesome. So, if without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to you. Erik, in his part one of our video series, shared a bit more of his testimony about his life of coming into the martial arts, where he studied karate for quite a few years and then was ripped out of that world by his convictions and knowledge and understanding of the origins of where those came from. So it's very important for us to study the foundations. And in doing so, we're going to discover some seriously important things. So, Erik, if you would, tell us what you have uncovered in your quest for truth on this topic.
Yeah, so like you said, this was posed to me as like something, just type up an answer for and, just make it a quick little, summary. But as I started to look into it, it was like, well, I couldn't really do that. This is a much weightier topic than I thought it really was. And it kind of scopes, a span of just kind of our daily life, especially in America. And the patriotism that we've grown up in and have been indoctrinated to uphold. Is that something really we should be upholding? And so I wanted to really just take it right from Scripture, just to see, is this something that we can uphold still as as followers of Yah. So okay, let me try screen sharing here.
Yes. This
All
is
right.
Erik and I's first go at a remote interview, guys. So bear with us for any
All
learning
right.
curves. Look
So
at
all
that.
right, did it work?
Oh, yeah. Wait, give it a second. It's
All
going.
right. Okay.
Yes.
All right, cool. So all right.
Beautiful.
So when I started the study, the Father just kind of immediately took me to Joshua, and mainly because I wanted to hone in on the whole idea of oath making
Mhm.
and swearing, because it's very prevalent throughout the Scriptures. We have whole commandments that are based solely on that, what to do and what not to do in regards to it. But for some reason, the Father just brought me straight to Joshua. So there's a lot of text here, but I'm just going to hone in on the first two verses. So it's Joshua 23, 6 through 7. So it reads, "Be very firm then to keep and to do that is written in the book of the law of Moshe, so that you may not turn aside from it to the right hand or to the left, so that you will not associate with these nations, these which remain among you, or mention the name of their Elohim, or make anyone swear by them, or serve them, or bow down to them. So, quick side note. Typically, from what I read from is from the Sefer translation, or from the Scriptures translation, sometimes the Hallelujah Scriptures. In this case, I'm using the KJV, and mainly because the KJV is really helpful because it lets you know what words the translators added into the text. A lot of other translations don't necessarily have that. They just kind of let it blend in, which can be very crucial in our understanding. And we're also told not to add or take away. So there's a little bit of problems when you look at those translations. But this is helpful. Just like when you see anything italicized in the KJV, it's typically letting the reader know that that's actually not there in the Hebrew. And the Hebrew is what we're looking at here. So the crux of everything that I'm talking about tonight is right here in this passage where it says, so that you will not associate with these nations. So associating in the sense meaning like serving them. These which remain among you. Little context. This is the whole book of Joshua is really all about the Israelites just kind of cleaning house and getting rid of all of the other surrounding nations around what will be the nation of Israel, so that they can have all the tribes inherit the land that Yahweh said that they would inherit, that they would just be able to walk into with vineyards already planted and trees already grown and houses already built. So this is what they were doing. But even in the midst of it, there were still nations that they didn't fully wipe out. Was that good? No, not necessarily. But I do believe this is something that was still ordained by Yah. But anyway, so it says, these which remain among you, or mention the name of their Elohim, or make anyone swear by them. So right off the bat, you kind of get this understanding that when you associate yourself with a nation, that you immediately swear by the deity that's over the nation. It's that whole idea of worshiping their deities and serving the nations are linked together. You can't just kind of go into the nation and not serve their deity. It's also kind of like you can't just serve that deity, not serve the nation as well. It's kind of like a hand-in-hand concept. So let's go to the interlinear and look at, let's back out of this real quick. All right. So I'm using Bible Hub, and Bible Hub is great because you can use the section where it says interlinear right here and get the whole context of the Hebrew in the background of what's being said in English, which is really helpful. Even if you don't speak Hebrew, it's just helpful to be able to see what's actually written. So what we're focusing on right here is this word that says tashbiu. If you click on the number right above that, it's 7650 in Strong. So this is coded to Strong's. Now Strong's isn't necessarily the best interlinear, but if you don't have any other interlinear and you're on the fly, this is good enough. So the word is shavah. It's spelled Shin Bet Ayin. The Strong says that it just typically means to swear. But if you go down, and this is typically what I do when I use the Strongs, I'll scroll all the way down to where it shows the, once when it loads, if it will. Huh. Come on. Well, it would give a Strong's exhaustive concordance. Let's go ahead and just refresh the page, see if that'll work. Well,
It's fighting you with all your awesome tabs ready to roll.
oh, I know, right? Oh, here we go. Something's happening.
There you go.
Come on now. Come on. Oh, okay. Okay, just brought me back up to the top. All right. Sorry, y'all. It's
All right.
minor technical difficulties. All right. Aha. All right. So you're going to scroll all the way down to where it says the Strong's exhaustive concordance. And this is really helpful because it gives a broader understanding of the word. Doesn't give you the exact 100%, I guess, Hebrew idea of it, but it gives you something as close to it that the translators of the time thought it could be. And there's a lot of great meat in just this word, and we're going to go into it. So it says it can mean adjure, charge by an oath, with an oath, or feed to the full. So it's a primitive root, to be complete, but used only as a denominative from Shiva. So it says Sheba, but technically it'd be Sheva. To seven oneself, i.e. swear as if by repeating a declaration 7 times, adjure, charge by an oath, with an oath, feed to the full, by mistake for Saba, take an oath, swear. So what really caught my eye with this is where it says to seven oneself. Now that you get that concept from the word Sheva. In Hebrew, Sheva is literally the number 7. It's also the root for the word Shabbat. So within this whole idea of swearing, you've got the number 7, and you've got the concept of Shabbat, the 7th day that was set apart by Yahweh. So it gives this idea right here. It says, swear as if by repeating a declaration 7 times. So we kind of get the idea that when someone would make an oath, a vow, a declaration, they would swear that they would repeat it 7 times over, like setting themselves apart specifically for this. Now, whether or not that was actually the case, regardless, this idea of 7 and setting yourselves apart is within the root of this word. If we think of it like the Shabbat in a sense, the Sabbath, the 7th day of the week was the first thing that Yah set apart, made kadosh to himself. It was the first thing that he commanded for, I guess, man to do after he created them, after he told them to, garden, to keep the garden and all that. The Shabbat was set apart for all of creation to keep. So when you hear this word, Shavah, to swear, to seven oneself, it gives this connotation like just as the Shabbat has been set apart to Yah, that's something that he would never break. That's something that he rested on. That's something that the angels in heaven rested upon, and that continuously keep. Something that we are commanded in the 10 Devarim, the 10 words or the 10 commandments, that it's the 4th commandment that we are commanded to keep. And if we did not keep it, then we would die. Swearing has this concept that your life is dependent upon what you have sworn, that your everything that you do, everything that you do revolves around what you just committed to keep. You're going to keep it 24/7 every single day of the week. And it'll be something that will, just as it says right here, that you have, declared 7 times over, it's something that will kind of be forever on your mouth. So it's a really weighty matter.
Yeah.
So now that we've kind of got that understanding, there, we see here that so that you are not associated with these nations, these which remain among you, or mention the name of their Elohim, or make anyone swear by them, or serve them, or bow down to them. We get this concept right off the bat in Joshua that if you were to swear to serve these other nations, if you were to swear to serve their Elohim, that's it. Like you've declared, just as Joshua said, as for me, my house, we will serve Yahweh. he gave them the declaration that if you don't decide to serve Yahweh, you can serve the other Elohim on the other side of the flood. That's fine. But you have to serve them or serve Yah. And you can't serve both. You know, Messiah said it himself that you can't serve two masters. You can't serve Yah and Mammon. And that concept is going to be talked about tonight. Specifically, the idea of money. So I wanted to kind of get the concept for, like, you know, the question was, you know, does swearing an oath in the military have to do kind of anything with the martial arts in a sense? Like, does saluting have to do anything like that? So let's see if I can find the tab that I had up. I think that's this. Okay. So Nathan actually sent me this tab. And it was actually this is actually a really great article. It goes through all of the oaths that were created for the military pretty much since its inception and how they've progressed over time. But what I kind of want to really hone on is like the most recent, excuse me, what we have today.
Mm-hmm.
And so it says right here, I, your name, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me, according to the regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So help me God. So, you know, just looking at that, you know, offhand, it doesn't really look like there's much to it. All the way up until you really get to the end. Just like we were talking about in Joshua, how if you were to serve the nation, you have to serve the Elohim. Like that's the context that Joshua was giving. That when if you were deciding to serve them, that you were going to serve their Elohim. That right at the very bottom of like this declaration, you're saying, "So help me God." Well, that's kind of interesting because there's actually a deity that the Israelites worshipped that was called God, and in some cases, Baal God. So if we go back to Joshua, let's see, we're going to go to Joshua 11:17. So in this setting right here, Joshua and the Israelites are just going from nation to nation, just wiping them out, clearing out Israel in a sense. And it's just like giving an account of each place they went to and they conquered. So it says in verse 17, from Mount Halak and the ascent of Seir, even as far as Baal God in the valley of Lebanon, below Mount Hermon, he captured all their kings and struck them down and killed them. Well, it's interesting that one of the places specifically that he mentioned was Baal God. If you go into the interlinear, it will, specifically bring it up, Baal God. And as you're reading it in the English, you see that G-A-D, and you say, well, that sounds like Gad, like kind of like one of the tribes of Israel. Well, it's actually the same name. The deity here mentioned is the same name for the tribe of Yasharel of Israel that was given to them. So what does that mean, that Israel was named off of a pagan deity? No. But within the culture, and through what we'll study in just a bit, you can kind of see why, I guess, they were named that, why the deity was named the name it was. But again, if you look at the Strongs, it's number 1171. This is actually two words put together, which is kind of interesting in the Strongs. But it renders it as Baal of Fortune, a place near Mount Hermon. Baal kind of, should, make you, think a little bit, just because we hear Baal a lot in the scriptures as a deity that the Israelites worshipped when they committed fornication and idolatry. But what's interesting in the scriptures is that there are multiple Baalim or Baals in the scripture. That Baal literally just renders as Lord, as a master in a sense, a deity, a man of authority. In some cases, Baal can be rendered as husband, but that's like 6 times in the scripture compared to like a mountain of other occurrences that are rendered as an actual deity. So this Baal is rendered as Baal of fortune. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So I was like, okay, let's go ahead and let's get some better context for this. So I typed in, Gad deity in Google, and I brought this up. Now it's Wikipedia. A lot of people don't like Wikipedia, but regardless, Wikipedia, it is actually a good source. There's a lot of good information that you can find on Wikipedia that you can then bounce back off of other sources and prove that what Wikipedia is stating is just a conglomeration of what other websites are stating. Side note, also Wikipedia is owned by witches, so they should know this stuff pretty well. Wow. Wikipedia, Wikinpedia, So, anyways, here it says, God or Gad was the name of the pan-Semitic god of fortune. But it's funny right here. I called it God, and here I also rendered it as God. In Hebrew, the A sound is never A. It's Ah. The same way how we would transliterate or phonetically speak the O in God. Typically, if you were to speak like G-O-D in Hebrew, that would be God. But in English, it's God, which is really interesting because it's the exact same way how you would say God, the deity, in Hebrew. So as we read, we're going to find that might not be so much of a coincidence, but actually planned. So it says, God was the name of the pan-Semitic god of fortune, usually depicted as a male, but sometimes as a female. So it's androgynous. And as you'll see, most of the deities, if not all the deities that the Israelites worshipped when they committed idolatry, or that the other nations worshipped in general, were always androgynous, meaning that they both had male and female qualities. That goes into a whole realm of Gnosticism that the Gnostics believed that if they were able to combine both the male and the female attributes, that they could become like Adam and Eve in the garden again, because they believed that Adam and Eve were one flesh, literally, like they were just one being. That comes from the Kabbalah, or the Kabbalah, and then that stems through every other mystery religion that we have today, whether it's Hinduism, whether it's Buddhism, whether it's Freemasonry, whether it's Shintoism, whatever. It all comes from this same tree of life, in a sense, like they like to call in Kabbalah. So it's a distorting of the truth, but you'll be able to find it everywhere else. So back to the deity, it says, and is attested in ancient records of Aram in Arabia. God is also mentioned in the Bible as a deity in the book of Isaiah, and we'll look at that in a sec. Isaiah 65. Oh, that's cool. Brings up the Hebrew. Oh, that's neat. Okay. Isaiah 65:11. Some translations simply call him God of fortune, as having been worshipped by a number of Hebrews during the Babylonian captivity. God apparently differed from the God of destiny, which was also mentioned in Isaiah, that same chapter, I believe, who is known as many. Yeah, it's the same. Yeah. You will see that in Isaiah 65:11. The root verb in God means cut or divide, and from this comes the idea of, fate being meted out. So God was the deity that the Phoenicians, that the Philistines, that the Canaanites, worshipped as their deity to provide them wealth, prosperity, fortune, the means to survive for today, which is pretty important.
Wow.
Um, and it was called specifically God, not Gad, but God. That's how you would say it in that tongue. The same way how we say God today. So in Isaiah 65:11, it says, "But you who forsake," it says the Lord, but this is Yahweh. But you who forsake Yahweh, who forget my holy mountain, who set a table for fortune, and who fill cups with mixed wine for destiny. So here we see where it says right here for fortune. In the Hebrew, it's lagad, but in other translations, it just specifically says for God, and mixed wine with mixed wine for lemani, which is many, that deity that was just mentioned over there, and right here specifically renders it also as destiny, another deity that was similar to God in the sense of being meeting something out, but God has more of the idea of wealth and prosperity linked to it,
Wow.
rather than just destiny, rather than just surviving, or something bad happening to you. God is more so like the deity that you would pray to in order to receive wealth. So we see that the Israelites, this is one of the deities that they chose to worship during their time of idolatry and fornication and such. This isn't something that they were forced to do. This is something that they chose to do. We see in the prophets throughout that they went under every green leafy tree and committed their fornication. They desired to yoke to these deities because, like you see here, they saw that there could be power from them. They could gain something from them, but they didn't see the wealth and prosperity that they already had with Yah beforehand. But we see that there's this deity that's linked to fortune and wealth that's named God. That's technically what you are submitting to when you make that oath in the military. Now I'm trying to find
Yeah.
that page. There it is. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you say, "So help me God," that is what you're calling upon when you make that oath. You're calling upon another deity, a deity of wealth and fortune, of luck and prosperity, in a sense, a deity that would help you survive even after your life was spent, in a sense. We have so many people that have retirement plans and savings and such, and or debts they have to pay, and then that debt would be put upon their children after they would pass, and all of this is incurred because of false worship to another deity, that we are relying upon the Elohim of money to provide for us. And it's just interesting how all this coincides with the back of your dollar bill that says, "In God we trust." On your money, the currency that we have for today, it specifically is saying that you are trusting in the deity of fortune and luck on the back of your dollar bill. So there is no coincidence to that.
Nor is that anything new, right?
No.
Clearly, as you see here, I've got a gold coin here, which is from 1910. Okay, let's see. 1910. Okay. And on the back, right, it says those famous little words. You see the E pluribus unum, but then you see let's see, "In God we trust," right?
Yeah.
And then this is no different. This is a denarius, a double denarius. Let's see. This is a double denarius from 200 years AD after the birth of Christ, and you see the other Elohim that are on there, right? They pressed their images of the other Elohim on them as those Elohim that they trusted. Nothing new, like you're saying. And
No.
here's the verse from Isaiah. I love that you brought that one up, saying this is literally one of the things that Israel is being accused of doing. That it's not just the other nations, it's Israel themselves has fallen into this snare.
Right. Right. Like, you'd even see on the back of the dollar bill, like everyone always loves to point this out, but there's like the pyramid with the all-seeing eye on top of that. And I even just learned this today. A lot of people also like to, when they try to expose, Hollywood actors and actresses and say like, oh, see, they're covering one eye and whatever. And some of them won't cover the same eye. And this is kind of a side note, but this is interesting information that when people say, well, I thought it was the left eye, the left eye of Horus that they cover up in order to, to show the all-seeing eye. Well, actually, in the occult, if you cover up the right eye and you expose the left eye, well, that's just the feminine aspect. If you cover up the left eye and you show the right eye, well, then that's just the masculine aspect. So regardless, either way, they're still showing the all-seeing eye. They're just showing two different androgynous aspects of it. So yeah, don't be fooled by it. But with when you see in God we trust, you see all the symbolism and everything. You see the eagle on the left hand, on the right, the right hand side. Gosh, it's crazy. You see an eagle holding it's like 13 arrows. Is it an olive branch? And then you've got a hexagram on top of the eagle. I don't know if you can see this. Hexagram on top of the eagle with I think it's 13 pentagrams creating the hexagram. Everything about this is occult symbolism. There was no Star of David before the Masons. The Masons kind of brought the whole concept of the Star of David to light. The pentagram is the whole concept of the most occultic symbol for summoning a demon or an evil spirit or even a benevolent spirit. When you see like how you see on the American flag, you have 50 pentagrams or 50 stars that are all pointing up. The star pointing up in the occult just means that you are trying to summon a benevolent spirit in a sense. And that's also the masculine aspect. When you flip it over and you get the pentagram kind of thing, either way, it's a pentagram. When you flip it over on the bottom and you have two points facing up, that's the feminine aspect, and that's to summon a demonic spirit. Well, we also know that Satan masquerades as an angel of light, so either way you get a demonic entity, either way you try to summon it. But that's what's on your talos or your dollar bill. That's what you are submitting. Well,
The God of fortune. Right?
That's what you're saying that you're trusting in, that deity, the God in whom we trust. That's what God represents. Another quick side note. Let's go to this tab right here. So this is from the book of Enoch. This is Enoch chapter. It says 69 through 76. I believe that this is 69 that's mentioned. This is a recounting again of the angels that did not keep their first estate. That's like mentioned in Jude and in First or Second Peter. It's mentioning those deities, those angels that coincided with the daughters of men, that made giants upon the earth, but also the things that they taught them.
What was the mountain that occurred on?
That occurred on Mount Hermon, which was also mentioned in Joshua 23. Joshua 11:17, right next to Baal God, just
As
like
the
how,
location.
as the location. So
What does Mount Hermon mean? Do you remember?
No, I don't.
The
Do you?
place of the oath.
Oh, see, this all
Yeah.
works. That's crazy. Wow. Oh yeah, because they all like 200 angels came together and they bound an oath.
Mutual imprecations.
Yeah, and that's crazy
To be
because
soldiers of fortune, right?
they understood that this oath that they made, they would live and they would die by it, that their whole lives would be centered around this, that regardless of what would happen to
Yeah.
any of them, that they would all be held accountable for this. They understood what they were getting themselves into. They understood their shabbat that they were making. So but there's one deity, well, I say deity, like they call themselves deities, but the angels and such. So there's one angel, and it says, and the third name is Gadriel. And he it is who showed the children of men all the blows of death. And he led astray Eve, and showed the weapons of death to the sons of men, the shield and the coat of mail, and the sword for battle, and all the weapons of death to the children of men. And from his hand they have proceeded against all those who dwell on the earth from that day and forevermore.
Hmm.
So it's like, whoa. We are told in Enoch that the serpent in the garden, another name that was given to him was Gadriel. What that literally means is the mason of Elohim. So again, this is like the concept of what the Masons, truly worship. When you get to the 33rd degree, you're finally told what you worship. You could be told from the 30th up to the 33rd degree, but it's a choice that the 33rd degree Masons have to tell them. But if they're not told up until that point, by the 33rd degree, they have to know that they worship Lucifer, the light bearer. What we have to understand with the martial arts, with Freemasonry, with whatever, the whole concept is to achieve this this awakening, this nirvana, this oneness with light. This oneness with the universe is like how a lot of the martial artists or the yogis or Hindus or Buddhists like to mention it. They like to consider it like one with the universe. But when you really dig into their sources and their texts, they all come back to this coinciding, all-encompassing knowledge of light. And it's not always necessarily a deity, but it's more so just like even being linked to the light. But we see that what is this light? We see was it Azazel that taught, that was considered like Satan? Was it Gadriel? Was it Shemyaza? Whatever. We see throughout cultures that deities are given multiple different names, but they're all linked to the same deity. The Roman pantheon was just the Greek pantheon flipped over and given different names, but they're all the same deities. And you see that in Hinduism. You have this. You see the deities for Venus are the same throughout as deities for Mercury and for Saturn and for Pluto, even whatever. They're just shaken up a little bit, given a different identity and given a new name, but they're all the same deity. They all do the same things. They're all androgynous. They all have this concept of bringing you either to complete destruction or to this false light. And this one actually has the name God in it as well. And what did Satan do to Eve? He tempted her with the knowledge of the tree of good and evil, gave her this false hope of this fortune of being like Elohim, being one of him in a sense. And which is ridiculous to think about because she was made in his image. She was pretty much already there. So I don't know how you could have been. The light that he emanated must have been so encompassing and so tempting that someone who was created in the image of Yah could be tempted. We look in Matthew, and it talks about the time of Messiah returning, and that if the days were not shortened, even the very elect would be deceived. Think of it even like that from the garden. Satan is said to transform himself into an angel of light, so much so that he could deceive even the very elect. and even his messengers are made into messengers of light.
His workers, right? His
Yeah,
apostles.
exactly, yeah. Um, so, don't be deceived by, the things that the martial arts has to offer or whatever. We see even here that the deity God Riel, which was more than likely what the G truly represents. It could be like what is it,
Gaia.
the generative power. Some people say Gaia, some people say like geometry. Some of the really high ups will say the generative power, which is like the male organ and the female organ. But it also could literally be Godriel, because Godriel literally translates to Mason of El. And who is Godriel? He's the one that showed the children of men all the blows of death, and he led astray Eve, and he showed the weapons of death, and the sons to the sons of men, and the shield, and the coat of mail, and the sword for battle, and all these things. The martial arts that we practice today, when you go to the source of them, they are linked to these types of deities that desire death. I was just reading today, when you look at Kalari Patya, I think that's how it said it. Like the Hindus practice. Those warriors were more than likely the ones who the samurais came from. They in Japan, they kept a very similar code of honor and such, and they were of the same kind of pedigree where only those who were born in high-ranking families or whatever could be considered a warrior in that class. But they were deadly warriors. They carried a weapon, a incredibly thin, flexible sword that was wrapped around their waist. That when they pulled it out, it was like a whip almost, and it was meant to immediately disembowel the target in front of them. And it was such a deadly weapon that today, when you practice Kalari Patya, I'm sorry if I'm messing it up, but when you practice it, they don't use that weapon anymore because of how dangerous it is. But that was one of their main choices for combat, and just like this, flexible kind of sword. But that, this deity, Godriel, that he is the one that taught men to kill man, taught men to make weapons to kill men. Now, we also have to understand that, Elohim separated man from the garden with, a cherub and then a sword that, went in every direction. Well, he used a sword. Well, the enemy was the one that went to show men how to use it. He showed men how to use it for evil. The amazing part about what a sword does in Hebrew, the Hebrew meaning for sword. Now, here's the crazy part. When you read it in Hebrew, that part where it talks about a cherub is standing between them and the garden, and then a sword is pointing in every direction, it literally is just, in Hebrew, it reads it as a keruv and a keruv, like a cherub and a cherub. The word cherub is the word sword in Hebrew. And a cherub in Hebrew literally is something that when it pierces into you, it causes you to become dry. It causes you to become thirsty. What's amazing is that the sword, the sword of the spirit, the sword of the ruach, is something that pierces and divides between bone and marrow, and soul and spirit. It's something that pierces within you, and that makes you thirst for the water of life. And that is what the sword was. That's what the sword is used for. That comes out of his mouth. It desires to cause you to thirst for his ways. But the sword that Godriel taught was a sword that just causes you to become thirsty and dry, and all of the fluid within you to drain out, and nothing is given in return. It just takes from you. The sword of Yah is something that actually gives life in the end. It causes you to quench and to thirst after his ways. so that the wound can be satiated, so they can be closed up, so that you can be made whole. And but that's not what's taught through the martial arts. That's not what's taught through these oaths and these trusts. So another quick side note. Let's go. I think it's right here. Hosea. Okay. So Hosea 2:16. This is one of my favorite passages. It says right here, it will come about in the day, declares Yahweh, that you will call me Ishi. That means my husband. And will no longer call me Baali. Now, we could get this really confused and think, well, Baal can be used as husband. Well, in this case, it's specifically not. And the context proves it right here. Verse 17 says, for I will remove the names of the Baalim, or Baals, from her mouth, so that they will be mentioned by their names no more. Well, what did we just read in Joshua 23? Joshua 23, let's see, it's right here. Yeah, Joshua 23 says, so that you will not associate with these nations, that you will not serve these nations, these which remain among you, or mention the name of their Elohim. Those are not going to come off of your mouth, or make anyone swear by them, or serve them, or bow down to them. Well, right here, it says that we are not to, we will come, it will come about one day that we will no longer mention the names of other Baalim out of our mouth. Like I said, Baal is just a concept. It's not necessarily just one deity in the scriptures. There are many Baalim in the scriptures, many Baals. And he says he's going to take them all out of our mouth, that we will no longer even speak them. Well, what is God? Let's go back to Joshua 11:17. 11:17 specifically says that God is a Baal, that he is one of those deities. So when we make that oath in the military to swear to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States, to protect the people, to obey the orders of the president, we say, so help me God. We are calling upon a Baal, a deity of fortune and luck, a deity of dispensing life, in a sense, that this is where you get your life from. Because when you see all of the wars that have been fought, over time, they've all been over money. They've all been over wealth and over taking over the nations, and like the Rothschilds and the Bilderbergs and all that. They're the ones that funded every single side of all of the wars that we've had ever since, like the Revolutionary War. They funded every single side of it, and the only side that won was the one that was funded the most.
Right? Which one
Yeah.
had the most of God, the fortune?
Mm-hmm.
And you made a
Mm-hmm.
great point when you said that God is
Mm-hmm.
is the Elohim of fortune.
Yeah.
And even as you were saying that, like, I thought of the soldiers of fortune. I don't know if you've heard of that before, but the soldiers of fortune is kind of a euphemism for guys who go from maybe oaths of enlistment to a country, to a sovereign nation state, who are passed out of that, right? Who are resigned, who leave their careers, they retire, and they go and enlist to be profiteers, soldiers who use their military skills, the arts of death, to then try to profiteer off of them. And by no indirect means, Soldier of Fortune magazine being kind of the hallmark, chronicle of this, or profiteering groups like Blackwater, which has a different, like, people call them contractors nowadays. That's kind of a more blasé way of saying the same thing. These are soldiers of God, right? Now, if you're not thinking of the soldiers of God, every time I hear soldiers of God, I think of things like the knights, any of the orders of the knights. Gary Wayne is done a tremendous job of chronicling the orders of the knights, and the knights, not just like the Knights Templar. There's been knight organizations and military brotherhoods since Cain.
Yep.
Because when you go and trace all of these origins, you're going to dig all the way back to the first one to make a blow of death, the first one to come into covenant with death itself, right? Where was death conceived, but not in the garden, by Cain's life? When Cain's was conceived, when he came out onto this earth, he brought forth with him the temptation for death, and he seized upon it. He was seized by it. It said sin, the temptation to murder was crouching at Cain's door. His countenance had fallen, and Yahweh warned him, hey, sin is crouching like a tiger ready to launch itself from the hidden grasses beneath your feet. Resist it, right? He was warned, lift up your countenance. But instead, he opened the door and allowed death to be birthed through his hands, murder to be brought through from his hands. The Knights Templar was an organization, right? They were called like the poor Christian Knights of Solomon. They just kind of branded these Knights of Solomon, these guys who could balance the monk and the mystic, the soldier and the priest. These were the people who were believed to possess the power and the humility, like David as an example, being used a lot of times or invoked, the idea of David from Christian sides of this. These were the Christian knights who went forth also under the cover of guarding the money. Really what they set up was our first formalized banking institution, where you could deposit money at a Knights Templar's depository. You could receive credits, which then could be turned in. You could travel to the promised land, right? The Holy Land, and you could go on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, and you could go to a Knights Templar and give them the credit and say, hey, back at this place, I left 800 pieces of gold. And this credit says, I have that here. And you could exchange that for fortune there, right? The knight's job there was once again to protect fortune. They were soldiers of fortune then. The soldier of fortune has always existed, right? And what is the signing agreement? What are the oath that you're saying here when you say, I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States, but in exchange for what? What are you given for in exchange for your services rendered? While you're in it, you're given dollars, right? You're given currency, you're given fortune. We pay our soldiers. Right now, I've been doing a lot of study lately on the difference between a volunteer and someone who is paid. Because there's volunteers who offer up their life to protect life, like firefighters. I'm specifically studying volunteer firefighters. And why is it different? What makes a volunteer firefighter different than a paid firefighter or a paid soldier versus a volunteer who steps up to defend a life? What is the difference there? Is that person studying the arts of death and profiteering on the arts of death? Or are they profiteering or are they volunteering to surrender their life for the sake of being their best on somebody else's worst day? There's a difference in mentality. And I think this is that scales, the balancing of these scales that Erik and I are really trying to weigh out here, of when you put your trust, when you swear an oath and you cut yourself off and say, I swear upon this that I will uphold my end of the bargain. If so, this God will help me and enforce this upon me, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. You're surrendering your soul to it, right? You are creating a soul tie, a union, a covenant with another Elohim. By an exchange, it gets legal right to you from that day forward. So I'm glad you're going to it, man. How do people deal with this if then they come to realize the truth? What do you do when this finally comes to your realization? When you realize maybe you made a rash vow or you made a vow that was wrong, what do you do?
Right. Well, there's just, this isn't something that, we're bringing up in order to, make you feel bad if you've done these things, because we all have. We've all pledged allegiance to the flag. We've all saluted the flag. We've all done something in regards to yoking with the deity over this nation. Regardless whoever is leading the nation, of America or any nation in general, if they are not leading the people into submission to the Torah of Yahweh, they are not serving Yahweh. Point blank and simple, no matter how Christian they call themselves. Remember, Christian was not a term that was used in high regards in the scripture. Even Peter said, be not ashamed if you are called a Christian. Why would you be ashamed if you were called that? The Greek concept of a Christian, when you look at the Greek for that word, It actually means, in their terminology, an antichrist. So they were called Christians, meaning that they were against the Christ figures that they worshipped. So they would be like, oh, like, King Agrippa looked at Paul and said, you almost made me a Christian. You almost made me against my Christ-like figures. That's what that's referring to. So it wasn't a good thing. So don't consider that just because someone calls himself a Christian doesn't mean that they're, serving Yahweh, like keeping his commandments, actually walking after the things of Messiah. If we have made any oath to Yah, or to another deity, we are to come before Yah and to repent, and pray that that oath is severed and ask for forgiveness for it and be cleansed of it. You said you were just reading a passage that was specifically referring to if you were to make an oath. You said it was like Leviticus.
Leviticus 5.
Leviticus 5. Okay, let's see if this will just pull
I'll
it
just
up.
read it real quick.
Okay, yeah.
So it just says here, like, making a vow, guys, we're not always saying that just because you have to go and enlist in a military organization in order to make a vow.
Right.
There's a lot of times where we make they call it a rash vow, which is where you say something maybe out of an emotional outburst, like, I will never allow that to happen to me ever again, right? There's a lot of times where we also say things like,
Guilty
we
of that.
declared a statement that I will never allow this to happen to anybody I care about ever again, right? Or I am not going to let anybody do that to him. No matter what, I will do whatever it takes to make sure that doesn't happen. There's these vows that we say that aren't always standing and putting our hand on a Bible and swearing, right? We're not stacking 7 Bibles deep and swearing on things all the time. Sometimes it's things that we utter that we realize later, whoa, I don't think I should have done that, because you've been bearing out a physical fruit from a spiritual you've been living out spiritual consequences and physical consequences from something you spoke. So Leviticus 5, this is what it says, verse 4. Or when a being swears, I'm reading from the Scriptures translation, y'all.
I also have it up here. So.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Or when a being swears, speaking rashly with his lips, to do evil or to do good, whatever it is that a man swears rashly with an oath, and it has been hidden from him, when he shall come to know it, then he shall be guilty of one of these. And it shall be, when he is guilty of one of these, that he shall confess that which he has sinned, and shall bring forth his guilt offering to Yahweh for his sin which he has sinned, a female from the flock, a female goat as a sin offering, and the priest shall make atonement for him and for his sin. So this is just something I wanted to bring to our attention, that even back when this was first being laid as an established precedent, the Father knew we would have these moments in our life where we would come to realize this matter, something we said quickly, rashly, maybe in a moment when we weren't paying attention, can suddenly be brought back to our attention. It was hidden, it was forgotten, it was blinded from our eyes for all those years. I swore secrecy oaths after my oaths of enlistment in the United States Army. I had secrecy oaths that I also swore in addition to that, right? Any other time that I had to handle certain materials or be a witness to it or carry out a piece of information from a physical printed form and then to manifest it into physical reality by my actions, carrying out an order, right? There was times when I had to say those things, then I had to carry the act out bodily, right? And this was also predicated on when I was early and when I was raised up within a family of people that did fully embrace Luciferianism, people that embraced light worship, where they were embracing a way of balancing their deeds of good with their deeds of evil, right? So that the scales of justice for them would be weighed out in accordance with the good outweighing their evil. But they could embrace evil to allow it to be empowering their works, right? Because their great work was to manifest, to bring forth and birth a titan, right? One of these other Elohim that would co-labor with them to build up a dynasty, right? That's what my family, the Reynolds family, was seeking to do on this earth. And they created and raised their children up to do that. I was raised up to be someone who brought forth fortune predominantly through walking out of blackmail and butchery for people. And so I was engrossed in that mentality for so many years of my life. When I came to realize these things, when I came to realize that there was deep transgressions in my life, I had to know what to do with this. Each of us, when we suddenly realize it, we have to turn to the scripture. And the scripture is so beautiful because it does. It will cut off and separate. It says in Hebrews 4:12 that the word of Elohim is living and active. It's sharper than any two-edged sword. It divides the soul from the spirit, the bone from the marrow, but it's the discerner of the thoughts and the intents of the hearts of man. And here our intentions are weighed out as well. But here is also where he has mercy, his loving kindness, to make a way for us to come out of it, to be absolved of it, to appeal to our great high priest for cleansing and deliverance from this. I think you had some other ones you were going to go with, Eric.
Well, one thing I want to add to this as well, it specifically gives us the command for what we are to do when we incur the guilt for making a vow. It says, to take a female lamb or a goat from the flock as a sin offering, and the priest will make atonement for him concerning his sin. Well, for us today, that isn't necessarily something we can do. We don't have a tabernacle that we can go to make a sacrifice. Many will even go as far as to say that, with the death of Messiah, that there's no more need for that. Well, not necessarily. We like to always say that Messiah died for our sins. Well, that's not even the point. That's not why he died. He didn't die for our sin. He died for he died specifically because in the Torah it is written that if a man were to divorce his wife, that wife would not be allowed to be remarried unless her husband that she was originally married to died, that she then would be released from that vow, that covenant that she made with him. So in order to be able to remarry his bride, in order to fulfill all of the prophecies mentioned in Scripture about how is the house of Israel supposed to come back, he physically came in the flesh to die for us, to remove the guilt of our idolatry off of us, to then to be resurrected again as a new man, in a sense, to remarry his people. That he fulfilled the law that specifically stated that if the husband were to die, that she would be allowed to be remarried. And guess what? He, even as all of the Pharisees came up to him and said, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife?" He said from the beginning it was not so. He's looking at the people that he's desiring to remarry, and he says to them from the beginning it was not so. But why? Because he himself wouldn't do that. He himself would not divorce to remarry someone else. He desired one wife, one bride, and one bride only. And he did everything in his might to be able to redeem you and to bring you back. He gave his life to be able to keep his law, even to show that he doesn't even break his commandments, his covenants that he made specifically for you to protect you. He won't even break that. He will stay in the parameters of that to show that that by the keeping of it, that there is life. But he, through the keeping of it, was able to bring us back to it, to bring us back in a covenant with that. So, today we are not able to, bring a lamb as an offering, or a he-goat as an offering. The whole idea, the concept of an offering, of a korban, of this, I don't know if this is necessarily considered a korban, but the korban was one of the offerings that the Levites would make, or that you and I would make. Korban, the root for korban is karov, which literally means to be close. There's this idea of the korban offering literally being as if Elohim said, I have commanded and my will has been done. When we go through this, it from the far back, it looks like that it sounds really legalistic and it's just a lot of do's and don'ts. But no, it's simply that He has commanded for us to do it, and if we do it, then we've done what he's asked us to do. We've done what he's asked us to do to come close to him. That's literally the whole, that's all he's asking for us to do. He's just asking for us, would you sacrifice something of yours to give it to me, to make it a sweet smelling savor to me, to just come close to me? That's all he's asking for you. The actual sacrifice is not going to do anything for your sin. That is not the point for it. Even David says it himself in Psalm 51 that he does not desire a sacrifice, else would I give it. He doesn't delight in burnt offerings. The sacrifices of Elohim are what? A broken ruach and a contrite heart. That is what would bring you, that's what brought these people to desire to give an offering. Was the whole purpose, because he said, I have incurred guilt because of what I have said. Now I desire to come close to him again. So I'm going to do exactly what he asked me to do. And because of my guilt, look, he's already been made clean with him, with Yah, because of the desire to confess his sin before him. When he confesses his sin, he has been brought close again. And now it's just the actual act of doing it. Yah is so awesome because he doesn't just want us to do, just to say it, but he wants us to act upon what we've said. So he says, all right, you've said it, so now go ahead and take a lamb and sacrifice it before me and show me that that's what you mean, because I desire to be made close with you again. But I want to see the fruit of your words. I want to see the good fruit come about. So that's what that's all about. Today we don't have that ability to be able to do something like this. But what we do have is still the ability to cry out to him and to confess to him and to be made right with him, because we have a mediator, Messiah, Yahusha, who comes before the Father and brings our requests up to him and has made that sacrifice of himself to bring us close to him again, just as Paul says that we who were once afar off, who were divorced from him, have been now brought close again by the blood of Messiah. So through his blood, we are able to come before him to confess our sins unto him. And though we are not able to, give of a lamb, we have been given the lamb that was slain before the foundations of the world, for that blood to cry out on our behalf, to say that I have heard his cry, I've heard his plea, I am going to cover him. And through that we are able to approach the Most High. Without that, even if we did, brought up a lamb, even if we did that to please him, but we didn't come through the blood of the lamb, it would still be pointless. It would still be fruitless, because we have not actually done as he has commanded. Because we are first to come through the Son in order to get to the Father. So I don't think I necessarily have much else other than that. I will add
one thing you were saying about David. Yeah. David here personally, in 1 Chronicles 21, David has an adversary rise up to tempt entice him. And it says that basically Yahweh was angry with Israel. And so he had an adversary rise up to tempt David to number the troops. And David does that. He tempts the troop. He numbers the troops. Joab, he has him go out and number the troops. And because of this, he incurs a judgment against them. And David basically says he's given three options. He can have the punishment by plague, famine. He can have the enemies of his people come in and attack him, or he could have Yahweh himself send an angel to attack him. And he appeals that Yahweh could be compassionate, so let an angel come and attack him. An angel comes in and slaughters 70,000 men of Israel. And then as it comes to destroy Jerusalem, it says it's standing over Jerusalem with a sword drawn in his hand. And David sees this messenger, this angel, standing between the heaven and the earth, right? And he's standing there with a sword drawn. This should give you parallels to thinking of Numbers 22 and through 25, where there's an angel of Yahweh standing in front of Baal, one of the Baalim, right? Where we get this whole idea of Balaam's donkey. And there's an angel standing there with a sword drawn. Serious issue, right? But there's, at the threshing floor of Ornan, this angel is standing there. And there, David runs over to basically petition Yahuwah by making a sacrifice on that place in order to abdicate mercy, right? That he could receive mercy. And the man, Ornan, asks him, he says, hey, if you need my threshing floor, let me give it to you freely. And this is what David's response was. He said, give me the site of the threshing floor so that I may build a slaughter place to Yahuwah on it. Give it to me at a complete price so that the plague is restrained from the people. And Ornan said to David, take it for yourself and let my master, the sovereign, do what is good in his eyes. See, I shall give you the cattle for the ascending offerings, the threshing implements for wood, and the wheat for the grain offering. I will give it all. But the sovereign David said to Ornan, no, but I shall certainly buy it at the complete price, for I do not take what is yours for Yahuwah, nor offer an ascending offering without cost. You see that? David understood that an offering should always come at a cost. What Erik was getting at there is spot on. We must give an offering that's pricely, it's costly to us. And by doing so, we come closer to him, right? When we make a sacrifice, right? There's other times where we make a sacrifice of praise amidst trials and tribulation. That is a sacrifice.
Yeah.
This today, my feet are so jacked up and hurt. I'm in so much pain. And yet to try to lift up, not grumbling and complaining, because I've got 2 children and they're both wee lads, right? They're tiny. They grumble and they complain a lot. And I realized how groaning, there's a sound that a child makes when they're whining. And it's like the worst sound ever. It just wears on you. And it's so taxing on you and your emotional state of pleasantness. And you just don't want to hear them complaining and grumbling about good things, like when you feed them a meal that's good for them and they're like groping and whining about it. It's awful. It's like it takes away all this good from you, and it makes you desire for them to learn a different kind of lesson. But when you amidst trials and tribulation, when you're experiencing the shared fellowship of suffering, like it says in Peter, when you're experiencing the fellowship of suffering and you offer a sacrifice of praise, that's costly. That's the opposite of what you would want to give. But same for so many of you that upon hearing these words, guys, you feel pricked in your heart and convicted about oaths or vows or words that you have spoken. It's going to be costly for one predominant area, and that's your pride. That's the pride. You're almost always the thing you're going to have to sacrifice on the altar of intercession here is going to be your pride. The part of you that says, I was not wrong. It was not wrong of me to do these things. It was not wrong for me to put my hand over my heart and swear an oath of allegiance every single day for 17 years of your life when you went to school. It is, guys. It is wrong for us to swear these oaths. So help me, gods. These are oaths, guys, that we must repent of. And by doing so, we allow the sword of the covenant to sever those ungodly soul ties that connected our soul to another Elohim's. And it grants us the ability to then come closer by his Ruach, his spirit, to come and rebuild that gap by the blood of that was better than Abel's. Abel's blood from the moment Cain murdered him has cried out demanding mishpat, justice. It demands something to bridge the gap, to restore what was destroyed when death was brought forth into this earth. And it says that the Messiah, in the book of Hebrews, that his blood was pure, and it now testifies, and it is upon the mercy seat for us. And now we have that to help bridge that unfathomable gap and allow us the ability to receive healing, strength, favor, that he could turn his face and shine upon us once more.
Yeah. I mean, that's awesome. We serve a mighty Elohim. We serve a mighty Elohim that is willing to forgive us of our iniquities and cleanse us from our sin. Yeah, it's awesome. So,
do you have anything to say on saluting?
Well, even with that, it's the same concept. Like, quick little thing. Let's just look at the flag real quick. So this is an article by American Mason magazine. And I just wanted to like show real quickly some of the history behind just the flag in general. Um, the like let's just go ahead and start reading for a second. It says on January 1st, I'm on the second paragraph. On January 1st, 1776, General and Brother George Washington, after after having achieved a semblance of military order with a limited number of troops, proclaimed the formation of the Continental Army at his headquarters on Prospect Hill, Somerville, Massachusetts. There, he hoisted the Grand Union flag on a 70-foot mast in defiance of the British who were watching from Boston. The flag, too, closely resembled the British flag. The enemy sneered, and angry Brother Washington, while still in the field, sketched the idea of the stars and stripes on the back of an envelope. It was a Mason, Brother Francis Hopkinson, one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, who really designed what the legendary Betsy Ross then cut and sewed into the America's first flag. The following year, on June 14, 1777, the Continental Congress approved the Stars and Stripes as a symbol of our new freedom and independence. The 13 stars on a blue field defiantly replaced the British flag. After that, Masonic glory accompanied the Stars and Stripes on America's journey to growth and glory. So this is a great little article written by a Mason.
Wow.
It goes on pretty in depth,
Dude,
but
just oh my gosh, I gotta pause real quick. This
yeah.
just, if you guys didn't see too, if you read down to the next paragraph where it says Admiral and Brother John Paul Jones, father of our Navy in France, achieved international prestige for our Navy and our country during a historic ceremony at Quiberon Bay. There, the French fleet gave our flag our first national salute, the first time America was acknowledged as a sovereign nation. Under whose flag?
Mm-hmm.
The father of our Navy. Okay, are you ready for this? Father of our Navy, declared to be a master mason, right? Right here. Father of the United States Army, Continental Army, right? George Washington, the Mason. Okay, where were the Marines founded? Where's the home of the United States Marine Corps, guys? Turn Tavern, Philadelphia. The first established lodge of Freemasonry in the United States of America. All of these. Do you see this? What I'm getting at, guys? Navy, Army, and Marines, rooted in Masonic revelry, which is also rooted in the Knights Templar, right? All these are the brothers of the Knights, the soldiers of fortune. Every single one of them have their foundations rooted and grafted into a tree that is not the tree of life, but the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And by doing so, we are pointing out that they have their foundation stones, their cornerstones laid by the serpent, the dragon, the devil, right? And they are inseparable, you guys. So if you graft yourself in the branch that you are, if you want to be grafted into the house of Israel, if you want to be mounted into that, Yahuwah has a way of doing that. That's the sword of the covenant outlays that. Well, these other people have the tree of knowledge of good and evil to graft you into. And you can be joined to that through their covenants, through their vows, through their oaths. Well, if you want to be a part of the kingdom of Yahuwah, you have a way of doing that. And that's by believing and then hearing and obeying and walking with him. And so that you can be like him, to be made like him, and invited to then inhabit his dwelling place, to be brought in past the guards who stood at the door of the tabernacle to cut you down if you were not part of that kingdom. But once you are brought in and you go through that narrow gate, you are ushered into a different kingdom, a kingdom of life, where you can drink from the living waters that will finally quench your thirst, and you won't be trapped beyond the other chasm like Lazarus and the rich man who was trapped on the other side of that great chasm, always thirsting and never being able to quench his thirst. Whereas Lazarus was able to drink of the waters that flowed from the Father's throne. And that is what we want. I want you guys to see this. This is for each and every one of you to see plainly before your face that the roots of our foundations of our United States military, America, we call it the United States of America, the American flag. This is America. This is the land of the plumed serpent. It's the flag of the plumed serpent, you guys. That is what it means. When you swear the oath, I pledge allegiance.
Everything is by design. It's all by design.
It's by design that you are worshiping the plumed serpent still. Because these entities are cunning, like Erik said earlier. They are crafty, they are subtle, and they are very, very good at manipulating people to think that which they are doing is good, because every man does what is right in his own eyes, because the heart is deceitful above all else and full of wickedness. But you know what? The Father says if you will surrender to his ways, he will excise your heart, that heart of wickedness, and give you a heart that desires to do his ways, that he will circumcise that old heart off of you, and he will write his instructions, the loving instructions of Yahweh, upon you and set you free to do his will and his good pleasure. I want my children not to grumble and complain. I want them to want to do my will. I want them to desire to do it. I don't want blind obedience. That's what a soldier is. If I wanted my children to be a machine, I would turn them into soldiers. My family made me, they formed me, and they shaped me to be someone that did the will of the one who had gave me the orders, that they would send me out to do their will exactly. When I was in the United States military, the first weeks and weeks of your basic combat training is to undo your civilian mindset, your free thinking, free choice mindset, and make you into a yes man. Yes, sir. Yes, drill sergeant. You are only there to do exactly, so precisely that we watch videos of soldiers marching in perfect formation like a bunch of robots, perfectly, in unity, that they wear and look exactly the same. They carry themselves in a manner that is exact to the standards. Yes, exactly. But that is, the Father says yeah, that's exactly right, Erik. They're bricks in Babylon. You guys, they are bricks in Babylon. Because you know why you like to build with bricks? Because when a brick breaks, you just throw it out and get another one and drop it right in its place. But Yahweh said, when you make a tabernacle for me, you pick up unhewn stones, stones that have never had a blade cut them or a tool that has been wielded against it. I want raw rocks, right? Here's a raw rock. Ready? Bam. That's a sapphire. It's a raw rock. Here's another one. This is a sapphire. Both of these, the same thing. I know, look totally different, right? They both grow in these kind of hexagonal shapes. This one's generally appealed to be by most people as more beautiful. You know what? They're not uniform. This doesn't fit in any other shape except for this. And that's what his kingdom is about. Unique expression of him. His image is different than what most people would want it to be. It is not like the world's. It is a different kingdom entirely. This is what he wants us to be like, set apart for his good will and his good pleasure, fashioned into his image, so we can fit into that great tabernacle, perfect city, where we will reign with him and be like him in those days.
Yeah, exactly. And what's amazing about an unhewn stone, you know, especially like when you look at the account of Joshua or whatever, and they were told to, you know, take the stones from the water and, you know, make an altar. Like typically an unhewn stone is something that's been shaped by the water. So, you know, we are, you know, called to be, what is it? Washed in the water of the word.
Yeah,
that
husbands are commanded to wash their wives in the water of the word, right?
And and he's that perfect husband to us, Messiah, who is doing that for us, to us. You know, so like that's what he's looking for, to build up his altar, to build up his tabernacle, to something that was shaped perfectly by him, by the water of his word. Nathan was making a mention of, like, you know, all of us are thirsting and, you know, desiring to, you know, have our thirst be quenched by, you know, the water of his word. Well, why is it that we're all thirsty? Because the testimony of his word stands true regardless throughout all the ages, and it never changes. And remember, his word is that two-edged sword, that thing that actually causes you to become thirsty. He has pierced the hearts of all men, regardless of the age that they've been in, regardless of the time or whatever, how old or how young, man or woman. You've all been pierced by the sword of his word, and you all are thirsty for something, and we're all seeking after something to quench that thirst. But what will? Only that, but the water of it, the water of life that Messiah said that if you were to drink of me, that it would literally start pouring out of you, and that others would be refreshed by it.
Wow.
You know, so it's I didn't think we were going to be really getting into saluting until but I'm glad you saw that. That was awesome. Even like, you know, it mentions like the father of our navy, you know, everything that these secret societies do, all the names that they live by capitalized names. They live in that. They capitalize names. They use specific verbiage always to hide their true nature. The whole reason why we have all of this talk of symbolism and all of that in our society on the back of your dollar bill, whatever, is because so like the Masons or the Templars or the Kabbalah, they believe that because of the dividing of the nations at the Tower of Babel, that all the languages were divided and dispersed. That they would be able to circumvent that curse by creating a language that Elohim would never be able to, you know, mess up ever again, all through symbols. And if they could hide their language through symbols, then they could be universal throughout it all. That's their idea of it. Well, doesn't still really work, but oh well. But you know, you get this idea of, you know, the father of our navy. Well, right there, it's still another, you know, fist in the face of Yah, because one, he is our father, and two, he's also known as Yahweh Tsevaot. And Tsevaot, we like to say, you know, like the Lord of hosts. Well, Tsevaot is also used in the concept of a navy. Literally, that's also another word for it. Like it's like a navy, a captain of many ships. That is who our Elohim is like. That's what he depicts the heavenly hosts like. It's like a navy. So like, see, they even I don't know. It's just crazy, man. It's just they don't skip a beat with trying to blaspheme him everywhere it is.
No
Everywhere.
And not only that, how much they've sewn in, like you see here, guys. If you keep reading in this little article, you're going to see that the Pledge of Allegiance came from a Mason, right? That the beautiful, it's the seventh inning stretch. Let us all stand in our seats and sing the national anthem. Everybody rise, right? What is
you
this?
hold your heart, your right hand on your heart, is you're literally pledging your
written by a Mason, a
your
song
life
written by another Mason, and you're
to
pledging
that.
your life while you're standing at a square and a compass
Mm-hmm.
and watching, giving your worship. You're worshiping all the time, guys. We are always worshiping, and we're literally standing in a stadium where we raise our hands and salute, or we worship idols, the other idols. What are they called? Like, we have a show called American Idol, and we say there's no such thing as idolatry anymore. I drove by a town that literally had on its sign, giant sign, that said, "Home of the American Idol Season 10 winner."
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was their idol. They're like, one of the idols of America was born here. That's our claim to fame, right? Our nation has been interwebbed. It has sewn itself in together. It's been grafted into the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So what happens when you realize you wake up in Babylon? This is what happened to Abram. Yahweh was like, hey, come and walk before me. Come out of there, and I'm going to show you how to walk. He's like, where do I go? He didn't ask him. He just left. He left everything behind. And that's what he calls some of us to immediately. He's immediately going to rip you out of it, because the scales that have been over your eyes, it said the gods of this age, the God of this age, the Elohim of this age has blinded the eyes of people. There is a veil that is put over their eyes, like scales from the serpent, the dragon, that he puts over people's eyes so they cannot see the truth. When we talk to them, they can't see it. They can't hear it. They're deaf, they're dumb, and they're blind.
Mm-hmm.
And yet that is because they have drinking from this tree, and they don't even know it, because they were born into it, and because their fathers before them spoke rash vows over them and told them, hey, when you go to a baseball game with me, you stand up and you give respect to that flag. As if by standing up, guys, you're somehow giving this country protection. Like Veterans Day is coming up. Maybe I'll try to release this on Veterans Day. You know what I feel every single time on Veterans Day? Fury. I'm furious about Veterans Day. Every single year it happens. And you know what? People are like, we thank our veterans out there. You guys have no idea how to thank a veteran. if the best you can do for veterans is to offer them 10% off on a meal. Oh, you can come to Chick-fil-A and get a burger made out of chicken for free, one time, per one military valid ID. Okay? There was cultures, guys, that the way they honored their veterans was to give them their life, the rest of their life, their house, their taxes, everything paid for, the rest of their life, because they legitimately bled for their country. It's a different thing when you realize every one of our soldiers has become soldiers of fortune for other people's games. It's a brutal reality when you realize your buddies died so that the drug trafficking trade of the United States could continue to profiteer. And those same drugs, the heroin and the opium that came flooding out of Afghanistan when we started guarding their poppy fields, was then used and given to the soldiers as treatment for the chronic pain that they all inflicted on us, that they then got them addicted to, then took their drugs away so they'd kill themselves. You realize you're these cogs in these vast machines that are literally called meat grinders. World War I, the reason we have November 11th as the day we have Veterans Day, on November 11th at 11 o'clock, right, all the nations of the world stopped battling each other and the war, Armistice Day, was declared. Peace was authorized on the earth again. So in memory of that, the greatest slaughter of mankind publicly that we talked about, we're going to remember all our veterans and say, good job, you guys, good job. This has nothing to do with honoring our veterans, you guys. These are mass rituals that are designed to spiritually recharge these other Elohim's kingdoms and to continue to deepen those scales over those who do not know the truth. It's to thicken the scales over their eyes so they think they've scratched the itch of patriotism and that plumed serpent can rise higher the next year. This is the purpose of these things, you guys. You want to know how to thank a veteran? Lay down your life for them. Figure out what that looks like. Go and learn what it means to sacrifice for the people that are suffering and wounded. Have you visited the oppressed? Have you looked to the needy, the naked? Have you clothed them? Have you gone and visited the prisoners? Have you fed the hungry? Have you watered the thirsty? This is what you're commanded to do. By doing those things, then you store up treasure in heaven. Then your inheritance will be untouched, because silver and gold, you guys, is going to perish. It is literally going to consume. It will be consumed by that great fire that will scourge the earth. But to some of us, that will be nothing but a refiner's fire, and we will come out washed and purified and made clean and
Amen.
do the good pleasure of our Father in heaven. That is our desire for us. That is why Erik and I are seeking to do that in this series called The Sword of the Covenant. We want you guys to be able to walk in a different way, to be like Jacob, who once was a thief and once was a usurper and once used to steal the lives of the people around him. He stole the blessings from his brother. But you know what? He was changed and he was transformed by the trials and the tribulations he suffered under the hands of a brutal, lying, mischievous, manipulative taskmaster Laban. But you know what? Yahuwah established him. Yahuwah blessed him because he surrendered his walk to him. He wrestled with Yahuwah, and he got up from that encounter with the angel that he wrestled with, a changed man, and he never walked the same way again. It was costly, and that was a sacrifice for him. And he became Israel. He became Yasharel, the kingdom from which all of us, we want to be grafted into that tree. I want the tribes of the house of Israel and the house of Judah to be joined together like Ezekiel prophesied would happen. And I want you all to be a part of that. Erik and I's desires for you guys to come along with us as we seek to walk these things out and learn and study together, that we might become mighty men of valor, mighty women of valor, and that our children would not inherit the lies like Jeremiah 10 talked about, but instead our children would be like the hunters in Jeremiah 16 that would go forth and root out evil from every place that it had put itself, that it would seek and destroy every vain imagination and every idle, nasty, filthy work of the devil that has been done on men, and that men's hearts would once again regard the words and the instructions of their Father in heaven, so that he may be magnified and he would be glorified. I love you guys. Thank you, Erik, so much for coming on. Any last thoughts or things you would really like to say before we wrap it up?
One thing I will mention quickly about saluting and such. If you look up today, and this is one of the things I did when I was starting to study the martial arts and trying to disprove my the truth I was learning about it, I would look up, like, what is bowing, considered today. And one of the things that they equated bowing to today in Japan is saluting. And when you look at how they incorporated bowing in their culture, it was always to their emperors and to their deities. And and obviously not in, to their flag and such. It was also given as a sign of respect to elders and whatever, but saluting is one of the equivocal understandings that they gave to bowing. And what do we do today? We salute our president. We salute the flag. We salute our commanding officer. It's as if we were bowing to them. It's the same concepts. We everything everything that the world deems to be politically correct always has a apostasy, some form of idolatry from Yah, because the world's vision is not for him. Remember what the world was trying to do in the beginning. They were desiring to kill Yah by making a tower to ascend up to heaven. And Yah knew that they could do it because he had to send a delusion and to cause, not necessarily kill him, but to rise up to heaven. They knew that the unity and the power that they were invoking would enable them to break the fourth wall, in a sense. And so he had to send a delusion to spread them across the earth. That was the very thing that they were fearing that would happen. Why? Because what we see happening because of that is literally all of the nations being able to return back to Yah. The whole dispersion of the house of Israel, that was the plan of salvation from the very beginning, that his people would be dispersed throughout the entire earth to bring back a multitude, to bring back 30-fold, 60-fold, 100-fold, more than just the blood-related people to come back to him. It's an amazing story, and you can be a part of it. One other thing, again, don't think that we are condemning any of you who are in the armed forces or who are in the police force or who are firefighters or who are in the medical establishment or whatever. We're not condemning you for doing these things, but rather we are showing you a new light of things that we have all been blind to in our culture and our daily life. Am I saying that you should quit those jobs immediately and find another career? I'm saying trust the Father in where He is to lead you with that. But desire to walk out His ways to the best of your ability. Renounce the oaths that you have made, because you are only to swear to one master. You are only in the Scriptures said to swear by the name of Yahweh. That is the only name that you are to swear by. So you are just come before Him and lay your petition to Him and see just have a heart to to do His ways and conform to His will, and He will lead you in marvelous paths. He will make your path straight. He did that for me. I gave up the martial arts, and my life has been better ever since that. I sacrificed a great thing for me to be able to be brought close to Him, and I can't thank Him enough for that. And so, it might behoove you to consider these things. So,
gosh, thank you so much, Eric, for taking the time to be with us tonight. And I know there's a lot of work that goes into these things behind the way. Is there any website or information out there you guys can check out? Erik did let me show you guys, hold on one second. Erik, do you want to share your Instagram maybe?
oh, sure.
You got, right? Or if people have questions, if you want to share your email, you can do that or not.
Sure. Well, what he's going to probably show you is something I kind of do on the side. I do some carvings and such. I like to carve spoons and whatever. And so that I carved him a little eating spoon, a little pocket spoon. If you ever want to see any of my work like that at all, my Instagram is Erik H99. It's ERIK H99. If you want to find me at all, I'm on Facebook, Erik Hedman. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, just feel free to hit me up. And yeah, so. Yeah.
I ate my bowl of lentils with this tonight. Still on the spoon. Erik is super humble about his craftsmanship ability. He also makes knives, guys, which are way better than anything. Also, I should get that. But this is a spoon he made. It's got a whole design from a tree that fell and almost crushed my entire house to death. Look at that. Beautiful. The tree of deliverance. And here's a sweet spoon. Yes, these are our EDC spoons in my household. It's beautiful. Look at that little nimble bit on the backside. Erik does an incredible job because Erik is a man. He is a way of the blader, and he is super good with blades. And I'm greatly thrilled that he joined us to share the sharpest of his swords, which is the sword that comes from his mouth. Thanks for sharing that tonight, Erik. I look forward to doing some more episodes of The Sword of the Covenant. As always, guys, I encourage you all to live dangerously every single day of your life because the days are evil, but you were born for such a time as this. We'll talk to you soon.